Hi, welcome, and thank you for listening or watching the Focus Forward Business Podcast. I'm Sturdy McKee, business coach and advisor, and your host for the podcast. Today, I'm happy to bring you Angie Flynn-McIver. Angie's the founder and president at Ignite CSP, and the CSP stands for Coaching, Speaking, and Presenting. Ignite CSP offers workshops, training, and coaching to people and organizations really looking to go up to the next level. So thanks very much for being here, Angie.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, that'd be great. So will you please tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Ignite CSP, as you said, is a coaching company, and we specialize in communication skills. And what I like to say is that really anything that falls under the umbrella of people talking to other people, that's
Right.
where you can find us. So that's everything from having difficult conversations, giving hard feedback, pitching, negotiating, interviews, keynotes, lots of public speaking and presentations, all of that stuff where people have to figure out how to use what they have at their disposal, their words and their nonverbal language and their facial expressions and their voices to get what's in their head out of their head and to other people. So that's really where we're into other people's heads. And it's kind of magical and amazing that it ever works.
Yeah, it is actually when you think about it. Especially given my track record, it is amazing. So is Ignite CSP your first business?
No, actually prior to opening Ignite in, 2007, when it was really more of a side business for me, my husband and I founded North Carolina Stage Company, which is the professional theater in Asheville, North Carolina, where we live. Mm-hmm. And so that was the first business that I opened, and the theater is still, it's going strong, as strong as a theater can be going right now. It is doing very well. My husband runs it full time with our staff.
So how did you get started in business in the beginning? What prompted that decision?
Are we talking about business with this company or with the theater?
Let's start with the theater.
Okay. My dream from the time I was about 14 or 15 was to open my own theater company. I was one of those theater kids. So really every decision that I made in high school and college and immediately after college was in service of that dream. I really looked for opportunities to learn and mentors who would help me get the experience that I needed to be ready to do that. Mm-hmm. And then it just so happened that when I met my husband, we had both separately, we lived in New York at the time, and we both separately had harbored dreams of moving back to our native North Carolina. We're from different cities, but and starting a professional theater. So we decided to join forces, and that was what we did. So about two and a half years after we met, we opened the theater.
Oh wow! Okay, so
yeah,
because marriage isn't hard enough.
Well, we didn't know. We didn't know any better, which in retrospect was probably a good thing. We kind of took the leap before we thought it all the way through.
That's great. So what prompted you, and how did you start Ignite CSP?
I had been a professional director for, I guess, maybe 15 years in 2007. And at that time, a leadership development firm came to me and said they knew I had a background in education, which was I had done some theater education. And they said, well, do you think you could design a workshop, kind of a 3 or 4 hour workshop on presentation skills? And I said, sure, I can do that. And I kind of sat down and spent some time figuring out what that would look like. How can I take what we know about creating authentic communication on stage and bring that process, boil that process down to its real fundamental elements and take it to people who are not interested in being actors? And so I did that. That was our very first workshop for several years. That was all we did. It was just that one workshop, and we ran it probably 15 or 20 times a year for this one client. And I was still running the theater with my husband at that time. And then about 3 years later, I decided it was time for me to, there was way more that we could do with this work, with this coaching work and communication skills work. And I wanted to see what was there. I wanted to see what was possible from this framework that we had worked out. So that was when I started doing that full time.
Oh, okay, cool, cool. It's great that you kind of established a need for this before you jumped into it, though,
Yes, that
right?
was
There was a
lucky.
demand. Yeah, well,
Mhm.
smart, and maybe some luck, but that was very smart. So is there anything you wish you had done differently with the beginning of the company?
I do. That's a really good question. I actually think about this a lot
Mhm.
because I thought of that as a really sort of a side hustle at
Mhm.
first. I backed into it being a business, and I wish there had been a moment much earlier where I'd thought to myself, okay, even if you're just doing this on the side, think about it as its own entity, think about its
Right.
vision and its mission and what it's all about, because it wasn't until much longer, much more time had passed that I actually got kind of came face to face with that need.
Right. No, that's a great point. That's a good lesson. But it's never too late either, right?
No, absolutely, absolutely. I guess I have no, it's never too late, and I definitely have done that work years
Right.
since. But it was I fell over my own feet a bunch of times before I realized, oh, what I don't have here is like a cogent understanding of what this business is and how I function as its leader. And so that was some I sort of had to say, okay, hold on, I gotta
Reset.
figure this out first. Exactly. Yeah,
Right.
reset.
No, no, great lesson. Um, so, I mean, you've got a lot on your plate. Time and getting things done is always a challenge. Is there any advice that you would give other business owners who are struggling with managing or having enough time?
I mean, I think that the best advice around that
Mhm.
is advice that I struggle to take myself, which is doing the important before the urgent. Make room, make time for the important. Set up the systems so that they are going to hold you when things are really careening out of control. I'll give you an example. So I was
Mhm.
on a call with a client today who's overseas, and we set up this huge engagement. So we had our first workshop with this group today, and we're meeting with them other times. So we're on the
Mhm.
Zoom with these people in Germany, and somebody points out, "Oh, well, you're scheduling this time, but at this time, a few weeks from now, you will have gone on daylight savings time, but we will not have gone on daylight savings time."
Right.
And in all of our pre-planning and all of our careful thinking, like nobody had known to think about that, right? And so there's a part of my system that I need to iron out that kink.
Right.
And so it's that kind of thing that like it never felt urgent until gosh, today it was urgent to like deal with this time zone problem.
Right. Well, and that's a great point too, because one of the things we work on is the playbook, having those processes and things in place. This is a good point. They're never done. You know, you never finish your playbook, right? It's
Yes. Yes.
always iterating. Oh,
And
good.
I would say too, I mean, I would say one of my strengths that I possibly overuse as a leader is some resilience in the face of that. Of
Mhm.
my immediate thought when I learned about this was not, oh my gosh, the whole structure is crumbling and what are we going to do? And I
Right.
missed this one thing. It was, oh, well, we'll figure it out, right? It's 1 hour. We'll either move it or we'll reschedule it or it'll be fine or we'll figure it out.
Mhm.
But also at the same time, acknowledging maybe there is a way I can set something up so that I don't miss something like this in the
In
future.
the future,
So
right.
I think too that comes from many years of you know of messing things up and making some mistakes and figuring out how to keep going.
Right, right. And there are, yeah, I just think of sometimes some of the challenges. That's what we'll get into next. You know, as you do this for a while, or whatever business you're in, you get stronger and tougher and more resilient. And yeah, problems that would have taken you out at the knees a few years ago today are like, we'll be all right. We'll just figure it out. Right.
Yeah.
So in that theme, that a lot of folks I run into kind of, at least at some point, I'm included, feel a little bit isolated, like we're facing these challenges and problems and nobody else has ever, you know, faced these before, or what have you. You know, that's obviously not the case. We run in, you know, it doesn't matter how long you've been in business. I've talked to people who 35 years and still encountering new challenges today, new stuff. What are you running into that you'd like to share, and how are you working to overcome those?
Yeah, that's a very timely question, because one thing that really resonated with me when you said it just now is that feeling of being alone. What are you grappling with that that can make you feel lonely, or like who is with me to help me with this? And I feel like, and again, I may be projecting, this could be just me, but
Probably not.
probably not. But in the situation that most of us find ourselves in right now, particularly people who are knowledge workers, who have been working from home, who are separated from their teams physically, I have found it a challenge to feel as connected to my colleagues as I want to feel. So that is something that we overcome in a lot of ways. And as communication specialists, I was saying to somebody today, like, gosh, if we can't get this right, this must just be really hard to figure
Yes.
out in this two-dimensional way that we are talking to each other now. How do we make sure we're hearing on every level? How do we listen as deeply as possible? How can we quell the voices in our minds that are trying to jump to the worst possible conclusion and assumption about everything, right?
Right.
So I would say that's a big challenge in general for me right now, is just making sure that I am being as proactive as I possibly can to be in touch with my team, be in touch with my colleagues, talk to them as much as I can without wearing everybody out on Zoom.
Right.
And by the same token, continuing to reach out to clients and making sure they feel heard and taken care of, and not oversaturated.
No, those are great points. And again, if you're, given your expertise in what you do, struggling with this as well, then that's going to be a huge issue. And I know it is. I know two things you brought to mind for me. One is I do some of my meetings by phone now, like intentionally, right, to give somebody a break from the intensity of the stare, the gaze, or whatever. So, giving people that choice, if it's appropriate, could be one option. But I've also found that I get it, the struggle with the connectivity, but I found that there have been more people open to collaboration kind of outside the business too. And I'm not sure why that is. I think it's part of what we've all been doing, and that we're all looking for solutions and stuff right now. So anyway, there may be a silver lining in all of it also. But
Absolutely. I think you're exactly right about both of those things. Sometimes a phone call just feels like freedom.
Relief, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
While you go for a walk, or Cool. So what's your proudest moment in your business?
Wow. I would say what I really love is when a client, and this happened to me recently. So a client I've been working with on and off for about 3 years, sent me, she had just done a video spot, a video interview with the New York Times. And she was like, they told me I knocked it out of the park. I couldn't have done this without you.
That's awesome.
Your coaching really helped me feel like she could say yes to it and do a good job. And that kind of thing is like, and she has this like job that is important to people. So that part also felt like there was this very neat ripple effect of her getting her voice out in the world. So that kind of thing makes me really proud of our work.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, client successes are like all warm and tingly, right?
Yes.
So what's a big thing that you've learned recently that you wish you had known, 10 years ago, or before you started the theater even?
I think it is the classic, nobody is thinking about you as much as you are thinking about you, or you think they are thinking about you. So the proposals that don't go anywhere, or the email that doesn't get returned, or again, making up a story about why that's not happening. Like, that's almost never, this terrible thing I imagine is almost never what's going on, right? And a no, and this is again something I'm sure your listeners are very familiar with, but a no is such a gift. When I propose work to somebody and they say, oh no, for whatever reason, that's a real gift to me. It makes me understand either, gosh, I thought this client was a perfect fit. Let me dig deeper and figure out why they don't think it's a perfect fit, or I was chasing something that wasn't a good fit for us, and they want something that is actually really different than what we offer. And this is great, that I need to take this and move forward and have that thicker skin that you were talking about earlier.
No, that's great. I heard somebody, and I love this quote. It was from heard somebody speaking, and she said, if you drag them into your business, then you're going to have to drag them around.
I love that. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, a no can go, save everybody a ton of time and angst.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
No, that's great. That's a great lesson. So any favorite articles or business books that have helped you that you would like to recommend or share?
I am a big Seth Godin fan, so I recommend most of his stuff. Lately, I'm giving my clients his latest book, which is called The Practice. And so that's a great one. I'm also a big fan of, I was hoping I had it in here, but I don't, a book called Start Finishing by Charlie Gilkey. Okay. And it's really about this. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a really great ideas about how to go from, oh, I have this wonderful idea, to, oh, I finished this thing and it's done now. And then I would say Cal Newport's work is some of my favorite. He wrote Deep Work, which I go back to a lot, how to get some of the distractions put away so that you can actually do what your deepest and best work is.
Those are cool. Thank you. The great recommendations. Check them out. Any other thoughts you want to leave us with before we wind down?
I guess I would just say that communication is something that we do so much that we take it for granted. And our work is about creating intentional conversation, about understanding the why of your speech, so that the how falls into place. And I have become really kind of nerdily obsessed with this idea of, where are we coming from when we're talking? What am I trying to do? How am I trying to reach you? What do I need? And I would just encourage people to not take their communication for granted. Think about how you can, how and why it serves you to be intentional in the way that you speak.
Well, if we could explore one more thing, I guess because of your expertise and what you were just saying, I think of, I listen to communication. I ran a physical therapy practice for 20 years, and I'd interview people and ask folks, that was one of the questions, like, can you describe your communication skills? And it felt a little bit like Rain Man sometimes, for people like, oh, I'm an excellent communicator. And they would say that, and then like, oh, that's great. What kind of formal training or what, background do you have or what have you? And they would have no idea. And they basically interpreted that question to mean, how articulate are you? And, in a clinical setting, as with coaching, it's super important to be hearing and listening and processing, and attentive to all those things the other person is saying and going through verbally, non-verbally, and all the rest of it. So that idea of a communication being a two-way street, that's kind of what I was always looking for. Now, I'm not going to throw all therapists under the bus. Somebody I hired a few years ago now, I asked the same question. He said, well, pretty good. And I'm like, okay, what kind of training background? He's like, oh, I was a communication minor and I've done this and this. And I'm like, okay, thank you, finally. Right. And we talked a little bit more about those things. But yeah, can you comment on that, or maybe share your thoughts on the importance?
Yeah, I mean, if I were an emoji, I would be like, there's like confetti coming out of my head right now, because what you just said is what we talk about all the time, that people tend to think that, oh, I said this thing, and as I said it, I mean, going back to what I said before, as it came out of my head, it made sense, and all of the words came out in the order I planned. Thus, check, I'm a good communicator. But of course, that doesn't mean you could do that alone. There's no so what to that, right? It's all about, did the thing I said, get to the person and get something back. It is this two-way street. So we tend to think a lot about communication as being transmitting and not so much about am I receiving back the thing that something that makes sense. Is this matching? And
Right.
and like I said, I think about this stuff all the time. And this phrase came to me the other day as I was talking to my husband, who is a wonderful person. And sometimes I feel like he can't hear me when I'm talking to him. I have a teenage son, and we also have this situation with him. But I thought, it's like when I'm talking, you have a head full of bees. Like there's something I can't penetrate. But part of that is the way it's on the transmission end, right?
Yeah.
So there's listening and how do we work together? How do I say, oh, you're having a head of bees moment, I'm going to come back? Or what do you need differently from me? And how can we pull back the curtain on our communication and say, what do you need from me in order for us to have this conversation? How can we meet in the middle? And
even
again,
if it's
that's
time,
where yes,
right?
Yes.
A moment to
Yes.
process whatever's going on in the head right now, and then the space and time to then be receptive. Yeah. You made me think about the old, I don't know if you remember this, the old Far Side, where the kid's in class and he raises his hand and says, I'm sorry, my brain is full.
Yes, that's right. Full of bees. Right. That's right. No, but I think because we take it for granted, and because we think we have a very hard time getting out of our own way about communicating, which is true of all of us, I think almost all of the time, it can behoove us to work a little bit harder to meet people partway.
Yeah. No, that's another great final thought. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you so much for that. Cool. Well, thanks very much for being here. Really, really appreciate it. Great having a conversation with you.
Thanks. You too. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Angie.